Hey guys, it's Ashley, a scrapping nerd, and I'm back continuing working on Christy's Beautiful Life 30 Days of Sketches Series 10, and I have the Day 7 sketch from Karen Leahy today, and I really started out liking those arrows, and this took a turn, as you'll see. So I have these Craft a Clock Seaside Greetings cut aparts. This is a Stamperia Antarctic stamps, and then all of the papers and those little charms are the Blue Fern Studios Seaside Cottage. And of course I'm working on a wedding photo, and then this is just an ivory paper from my stash. And so I put the sketch down on the right there, and you can see that it's just kind of a photo cluster on the left. And so I started with that, and I used these Blue Fern papers, and I only had the smaller papers. I don't have the 12 by 12, so I thought this sketch was perfect for having the smaller pack of papers. And so I double matted the photos here, and I am going to be using the Distress Ink and Vintage Photo and inking all the edges of everything. And I wanted to put the top layer up on foam, and so I have this foam tape, and I'm going to only take off the middle layer and stick it down because I didn't know if I was going to be sticking stuff between the layers when I was putting the layout together. And so I'm getting that on the paper, and then this is kind of the title. It says Seaside Story, and it's one of the journal cards from the Blue Fern Studios collection. And you saw that other one was like a pocket, but I'm going to use that as a layer as well. And so here's some of the cut aparts from the Craft a Clock Seaside Greetings. And I really had intended to kind of make like an arrow with that, kind of how the sketch was on the right. But then I had these ship's wheels from some scraps from the Blue Fern papers. And I decided that I thought those would look cute around the photo and then around the cluster that's going to be on the right. And I had a little trouble figuring out where I wanted to put this smaller one, and I liked it here on the right. But then when I had decided to use this other scrap that had a ship wheel and put it with the cluster on the right, then that was too much. And so I do end up putting it on top of the photo near where the title is, the Seaside Story. And so I'm liking how that's looking. I inked the edges of the ship wheel as well when I cut it, and I had thought about popping it up, but I decided I was going to pop up some of the floral clusters instead. And so in the sketch you can see that there's some mixed media on like kind of in a diagonal, and so I'm going to use these stamps, and I marked kind of where the photo was, but you'll see I'll keep bringing the photo back in. And I really liked this net stamp, and so that's going to be kind of the main background stamp, and I'm still going to just use the Vintage Photo to stamp it on the paper and kind of stamp it so it shows it around the photo. And so I'm pretty proud of myself for using stamps. I don't tend to use them a lot on my layout, but I have them, and so that's kind of a goal of mine, is to work on using stamps and doing mixed media on my layout. So we'll see how that goes. And so I'm liking how this is looking. I just wanted it to kind of stick out from behind the photo. And then I wanted to make sure that I also put some over on the right with the cluster behind the ship's wheel. And so I just used a scrap paper so that I didn't stamp my table there. And I'm liking how that's looking. The ship wheel looks good on there. And it wasn't as big, and I had thought about doing two of the stamps with the big ship wheel on the right, but I'm going to fill in those gaps with the cut apart florals from the Craft a Clock. And so I really liked how that looked better. And then I decided that I needed a little something more in terms of the background. And so you're going to see the Stamperia also had these shells, and I thought that they would look nice down at the bottom. And so I cut out this little journal pocket first because I needed to see how far it would stick out at the bottom. And then I decided that that was still a little bit too long. And so I'm going to trim off the bottom of that journal card and then use that extra piece as a little layer. But I needed to see how far that it would go down so I could figure out where I was going to put the shell stamps that I'm going to add. And so here's where I'm just making that a little bit shorter and then inking everything in the vintage photo. And so here's these shell stamps, and I'm going to use the Victorian Velvet distressings to stamp the shells. And these are really nice stamps. They came out really nice, and I like how it looked. I'm going to put the 2 in the bottom left and then kind of just put some sprinkled in and over the net stamp that I had already stamped as well. And just to kind of fill in the spaces around and add that mixed media element that was in the sketch. And so I really like how those are coming along, and I'm going to put this journaling layer at the bottom there, and here I'm still scattering these around. I end up putting one between the 2 nets on the right, and that bothers me for a while. I didn't like that open space right here, that open space between the 2 net stamps, and so I thought that the shell would help kind of fill that in, and I like it, but you'll see I'm gonna add another shell to fill in the space between, which is where I differ from the sketch, because it kind of connects the clusters in the end. There isn't really a space between them, but I feel a little bit better, and I just felt like there was like trapped white space between the 2, and maybe I should have added another of the net stamp in there, or made them be a little bit closer together, but it did bother me for a little bit. And so you see here I'm just fiddling with all these florals around the layout, and they come, so when I first cut them out, because it's a cut apart from Craft O'Clock, and when I first cut them out I cut them with the white space around it, because usually that doesn't bother me and I'd rather have it there, and then I can always cut it off if I don't use it. And so you're going to see that I will trim all the white edges off and then ink those with the vintage photo, because I didn't like that the cut aparts had the white border, but then I have it on an ivory paper, and so it really stood out, and I just didn't like how that looked. So once I cut off the white border, and then the little kind of sprigs that stick out, I didn't want to cut those because they're very thin, so when I inked everything, I inked those up so they weren't so stark white, and that looked good. And you can see I'm using my little tool with the ball on the end with the foam to just add some dimension and give them so that they kind of don't lay flat and they'll pop off of the page, as well as I did do some pop dots on the back of the main cluster. And so I'm going to be sticking the little florals, like I said, between the ship's wheel and that net on the right, and it just helps fill in that negative space that was there, since I only did the one net stamp. So I'm liking how that's looking. I'm getting everything kind of situated. I'm always moving the florals around. I'm still not liking that weird space between the photo cluster and then the cluster on the right, but I'm just kind of moving forward. I'm getting this cluster piece stuck down, and it's coming out really good over there. I decided I needed to add the smaller seashell stamp, and so I'm gonna put one there. And in the end, you'll see I'll add that extra one to kind of connect the 2, because I'm going to be adding some florals around this cluster, still trying to fill in that weird space between my stamp and the cluster. I really like this stamp. I feel like it's a very hard like square, and so I need to work on my stamping to try to make things not have such a hard line to them. But there's where I fill in that spot, and I like it, and it just adds something to it. And so in the layout's done, I'm going to add some of the Nuvo Sparkle Spray in Blush Burst around it, just to add some more of those mixed media elements that were in the sketch. But that is the layout for today. Thank you to everyone who's liked and subscribed to my channel. I really appreciate it. If you haven't yet, go ahead and hit those buttons below. Make sure you check out all of the layouts for Christy's Beautiful Life Series 10. And everyone have a great day. Bye.